It's a very quick turnaround from game week 13 to game week 14, which starts on Tuesday evening, a midweek round of FPL before another deadline next Saturday. Had a big success on my game week 13 free hit. We'll talk a little bit about that, but also what my plan is going into game week 14. I've got just one free transfer, but I've got a couple of issues in my starting lineup with both Senesi, who's now suspended, and Ismaila Sarr, who is also likely injured this week. Do I just sell one of them? Which of them is the priority? Who are the best replacements? Or actually, is it best to just take a -4 to take them both out and set myself better up for the future? What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new to the channel. It is a very quick turnaround. Apologies that this video is out on a Monday morning for you rather than a Sunday evening, but I was enjoying myself in a crazy game of Premier League football between Chelsea and Arsenal. What a game that was. One of the big reasons to free hit was to go against that game, and it was very unpredictable. I thought Chelsea played very well. Of course, the Caicedo red card did change it a little bit, but enough talk about that. It was free hit week and it did go well. Now, there are some of you on free hit that definitely will have scored more points than me. I've definitely seen free hits that did better than me, but I'm not going to sit here and complain about how it's done because I've got a massive green arrow. 388k to 121k, a third of my rank this week. Absolutely buzzing with that. I scored 68 points, which was 24 above my safety score. A reminder that that safety score is taken from livefpl.net, and it is the amount of points that you need in order to not change rank. 156k game week rank, moved my overall score up to 787. Absolutely what I needed. I said going into the week, if my free hit team outscored my normal team by 4 points, then I would be happy with that. It outscored it by 22 points. An absolutely crazy game week. Thiago came in, he scored twice. Phil Foden came in, he scored twice. And Gakpo came in with a goal and an assist. A clean sheet for Matty Cash, O'Reilly with an assist. Mo Salah not showing up at all, not even getting on the pitch for Liverpool. It was a good thing that at least one of my bench players got some minutes, and that was Esteve. I didn't free hit with Esteve in my starting lineup, don't worry, but he did get defensive contributions in that 3-1 loss to Brentford, getting me 3 points. So yeah, a big game week. I did make some mistakes. There were things I definitely could have done better, like going for a Dango Atara over a Kevin Schade, not going for Morgan Rogers, who I wasn't that sold on, to be honest. I didn't love his data, and he didn't get much in that game. Not going with Daniel Munoz. I did actually take out Virgil van Dijk as part of the free hit. I could have gone with a double up on the Aston Villa defense. There were, of course, things I could do better, but there's no way with a massive green arrow from 388k to 121k, almost inside the top 100k now. I am absolutely buzzing with that. And the other benefit to the free hit this week is it means I didn't play the triple captain. Haaland blanking despite Manchester City scoring 3 goals past Leeds. It means I played the right chip in my eyes, and I've still got the triple captain left to play in the next few weeks, probably still on Haaland. And after the free hit, this is how my team then loads back in. Just one free transfer and 0.7 million in the bank. And on the deadline stream, I said there was one thing I didn't want to happen in game week 13 for my normal team, and that was Senesi to get booked, because that would have been his 5th yellow card, and he would have picked up a suspension in probably the last good game I need him for, Everton at home midweek. And it was all fine until the 91st minute when they were 3-2 down. He got himself booked. So Senesi is suspended for game week 14 at home to Everton, and I have an issue there. The other thing that became a bit of an issue is it looks like Ismaila Sarr of Crystal Palace is going to be out for quite a while. He's going to go to the African Cup of Nations in a couple of weeks anyway. So by the sounds of it, and by the sounds of what Oliver Glasner has said, is we are not expecting to see Ismaila Sarr back until at least at the end of the African Cup of Nations. So I've now got a couple of issues to deal with. We'll talk about some potential replacements. We'll talk about all of that. But it was a good week, but I've now loaded back into a team which doesn't look so good, with a couple of issues with Senesi and with Sarr. So as it's a quick turnaround, the video on Tuesday morning will be the complete guide video. So as a first ask, if you've got any questions that you want answered, I will do a free hit draft, a wildcard draft. I'll do benching rankings. I will do best players to buy. I'll do all the usual stuff. But if you do have specific questions that you would like answered, please do drop them in the comment section down below. We're going to answer a few of the big ones that I think there are at the moment in this video, but we'll answer a whole load more you'll probably get two quite long videos, this one and then the one on Tuesday morning, to hopefully get you ready for that game week 14 deadline. But just to take a quick look at the fixtures that we've got, of course, in game week 16, you do get the additional 5, well, the maximum up to 5. You get topped up to 5. So if you have 4, you go to 5. If you have 1, you also go to 5. So by game week 16, you need to have used all of your transfers to get the 5 free transfers. To look at the players with the best upcoming fixtures that you're wanting to target, Liverpool are up there. And Mo Salah didn't start. And after a 2-0 win, Arne Slot has got a big debate on his hands about whether to put Mo Salah back in or continue with this maybe Alexander Isak and Cody Gakpo sort of combination through the middle. And if he continues with that, I'm not sure Isak is fully nailed, particularly with Ekitike there, but Gakpo could be one to really look at. He was a great option on free hit. Now, outside of the very late goal, it was just the assist for him, but definitely an option to keep an eye on. And let's keep watching how this Liverpool system evolved. And of course, a clean sheet for them. I still think I would look to back some of the other defences like Manchester City, Arsenal, maybe Newcastle, but also Crystal Palace before Liverpool at the moment. But if you're looking for a defender and you also own the others, you could look back for someone like a Virgil van Dijk. But as an owner, I would probably advise against that. Next up is Manchester City. Yes, Haaland is there, but Foden looks like he's starting to find a bit of form. O'Reilly, Gvardiol and Nunez in defence also are worth considering if you're looking for a replacement for Senesi this week. Arsenal right up there. Saka continues to return. Eze got taken off slightly early. Trossard wasn't available in the end. Gyökeres came on as a sub. Calafiori got taken off at half-time. It looks like Saliba and Gabriel are both going to be out, so it feels like a bit of a minefield in that Arsenal team. But I still like Saka. I still like Rice. I still like Timber. And I still like David Raya. Man United next up there. It was the week of Bruno Fernandes. A couple of assists for him. He remains a great option. And if we're getting close to AFCON, he's definitely the one to buy there. Newcastle quite high up there. Defensively is probably where you're looking. Voltemada could be an interesting punt up front, but you're probably looking at someone like a Malik Chow or punting on a Dan Burn or a Lewis Hall or a Livramento. I would still buy Malik Chow as the one if I was buying one of them now. Next up is Nottingham Forest. There's not too much to talk about with the defeat to Brighton, but Elliot Anderson in midfield is absolutely one on my radar. And then it's Crystal Palace. Munoz escaped the yellow card. He's not suspended for Burnley away. So if you've got him, that's great. He does remain on 4 yellow cards. So just one away from getting that suspension. Richards did start. We also saw starts for the usual back 5. Is there going to be a rotation? Is Richards definitely going to start against Burnley? I'm not 100% sure. It looks like Sarr is out, which does damage them a little bit going forward. Mateta took the penalty. Pino will probably get even more minutes now that Sarr is unavailable. You're probably looking more at them defensively. There's quite a lot of talk about Semenyo, probably the last player to mention here. I think he is still a good option. If you actually watch the highlights of that Bournemouth game, how he didn't get a return, Semenyo put his cutback straight onto the post, which was then scored. And Semenyo had a shot going in at the back post, which Evan Nilsson decided to touch in and just ended up being offside. I still like Semenyo as a long-term pick, so I wouldn't particularly be worrying about him. And actually also at Chelsea, some of the upcoming fixtures are not great from a defensive point of view, but some of the upcoming attacking fixtures like Leeds away, Bournemouth away, Everton, Newcastle, Villa and Bournemouth again, I don't think are that bad if you own an Enzo Fernandez. So starting off in goal, anyone who owns Pope, he missed out completely for Newcastle in their trip to Everton where they won 4-1. A big result for them, particularly away from home. Now, the sort of cover-up was that Pope was apparently injured. He apparently picked up an injury over the weekend, which ruled him out of that game. I'm a little bit skeptical if that was the full reason why he was left out. There has been a lot of criticism of Pope over the past couple of weeks about his performances and the way he's just gone absent in games. And we saw it again in the Champions League midweek with the goals that he conceded to Marseille. I feel like it's a little bit of a cover-up that they just said he was injured to maybe take him out of the limelight, to take a chance to put Ramsdale in, who I thought played pretty well. Now, if you want to sell him, a few of the best replacements are up there. You've got the likes of David Raya, Donnarumma, Sanchez of Chelsea, and Verbruggen are probably the top ones that I would look at a variety of price points. But I also think there is a world where you could just hold Pope this week. And that is particularly because the majority of you own Dubravka as a backup goalkeeper at home to Crystal Palace. And you might have much more important things to do with your team this week. Crystal Palace at home for Dubravka is not the worst fixture, particularly with Crystal Palace now being without Sarr. They will lose a bit of their attacking potential. Now, I don't think they'll keep a clean sheet, Burnley, against Crystal Palace, but it's not the worst fixture. And if you've got other things to do with your team and you want to see whether Pope comes back in, now that they're back at home, or whether it was just an injury to get a bit more of an update. We might get a press conference before the deadline. There is absolutely nothing wrong with just starting Pope. And if he doesn't play, you get Dubravka off your bench. If you do want a replacement, Raya, Donnarumma, Sanchez, and Verbruggen are probably the top four at the moment. Next up is Senesi at Bournemouth. Now he's picked up his 5th yellow card. He is now suspended. Everton at home and Burnley at home in game weeks 14 and 17 were about the only good games that Senesi has left in the next 10 game weeks. And now he's lost Everton at home. Just the Burnley at home fixture is probably not enough for you to keep him. If you have the ability to bench him and maybe start him in that game, that's absolutely fine. But for the majority of us, it's probably going to be a sell, with particularly some of the other fixtures. Like, I've got Anderson against City. I've also got Rodon against Chelsea. So it probably makes sense for me to look to sell him this week. In terms of replacements that you've got Timber and Munoz are probably the top two. They are both predicted to rise in price on Sunday evening. So they might be 6.4 and 6 million respectively by the time this video does go out. Outside of that, if you need a cheaper option and that's all you've got for the money for Senesi, who's up to 5 million, but he's probably a selling price of about 4.8 for you. Lacroix at Crystal Palace, if you can't go to Munoz, I still really like. You could, of course, go to Richards. I just think there's a bit of a doubt on whether he starts midweek. O'Reilly at Manchester City. Manchester City just leak a few goals, but his attacking threat is so good, and he's just camped in the opposition box a lot of the time. And with Aït-Nouri going away to the African Cup of Nations, that makes O'Reilly even more nailed for the potential long term. Anderson of Fulham is a nice cheap option, or as I've already mentioned, Malak Chow, of course, of Newcastle after his brace. But there are some still nice upcoming fixtures for them. Anderson, as I said, I quite like him as probably the best cheap option, or Richards. If you already got a Palace defender, Richards is probably not the one to go with, but Anderson does have City at home this week, which isn't the best. And then the final one is in midfield. So Ismaila Sarr looks like he is going to be out. And can I just say, my ownership of Ismaila Sarr this season has been absolutely bonkers. I bought him in game week 3 before the international break. He got injured. He scored on my bench and then got injured. And I was forced in game week 4 to sell him for a -4. In game week 11, I then bought Ismaila Sarr back for a few weeks before he went to AFCON. He blanked in game week 11. He blanked in game week 12. I then free hit in game week 13, where he's now got injured again before playing Burnley away, and I'm likely forced to take a -4 again to sell him. If I ever in my video say again, I'm going to buy Ismaila Sarr, please point me back to this video and how it's gone with owning him so far this season. Now, don't get me wrong, I still think he's a good pick. That's just quite unlucky with what's happened with me owning him. But it just seems absolutely so unlucky that that's the way that it's fallen for me this season. But he was pictured on crutches with a protective boot. It sounds from Glasner that he's not going to play again until at least after AFCON. It doesn't look great. Apparently, there's a lot of swelling. So for the majority of us, he's a sell. Again, if you want to bench him this week and deal with it in game week 15 or 16, then you potentially could. But for the majority of us, he is a sell this game week. In terms of replacements, now I've got a lot of different budget here because you might have money in the bank. You might be doing another transfer, which frees you up some money. If you can get up to Bruno at almost 9 million, he is still the best one to go with and my favourite United pick, and he has West Ham at home this week. Foden is in next. Again, I do think the returns against Leeds were a little bit of a sign of him returning to form, but he only had 1 goal, 1 assist in the league before that. So I'm a little bit reluctant to say he's definitely back, but one I do quite like if you're looking for a bit of a differential. Similarly for Gakpo, he found the net a couple of times, a goal and an assist, nice couple of returns. I do think he will continue to play a lot of minutes in that sort of left forward space or on the left wing. Slightly more expensive, but if you want a Liverpool attack, he's probably the one to go with. Declan Rice, if you've got a spare Arsenal slot available, their upcoming fixtures are pretty good, and his minutes are definitely looking more and more reliable after that random benching he had earlier on in the season. Minte, a nice, slightly cheaper one at 6.2, a very similar price to Sarr. The upcoming Brighton fixtures look great. How he blanked against Nottingham Forest today, I have absolutely no idea. The amount of chances he's creating, he almost scored a goal as well. So I like him. If you need a cheaper option though, Elliot Anderson and Nottingham Forest, he got a 6-pointer today. He got DEFCON and he got 2 bonus points in a 2-0 loss. Just shows how involved he was. He got 16 DEFCON. He as well has not hit less than 10 DEFCON in a single match so far this season. He's had 2 assists in the games previous. Of course, no returns for him in this week because they didn't score a goal. But I quite like him at 5.3. You could go slightly cheaper for someone like Dewsbury Hall, who scored in back-to-back games, or go all the way down to someone like Potts of West Ham, who's taking some set pieces and also pretty good for DEFCON. So with all of that in mind, let's have a look at my team. And I've confirmed 2 transfers. The 2 players who were big issues in my team this week, I've sold both of them. Now, there was part of me that almost didn't do both transfers, but there is potential price changes for future transfers between now and sort of game week 16, 17 that I don't have a lot of money left in the bank. So I did decide to take the -4 in what I do think improves the way that my team looks for game week 14. So I've got David Raya in goal and I've got Dubravka on the bench. David Raya hasn't had a clean sheet in the past 2 games, but I still think Arsenal look very good defensively. And as a result, I've done what I've said I was going to do and buy a second Arsenal defender, and that was Timber. And I've upgraded Senesi all the way to Timber for 6.3 million. He is predicted to rise in price tonight on Sunday evening. So Timber is the player that I've looked to bring in. Now, I know there is a slight risk that he doesn't start Brentford at home. I am very much aware of that. But it sounds like Gabriel is definitely out, and it sounds like Saliba may well be out for Brentford at home. And if that is the case, I can't see Timber being dropped for that game. Now, he might well do. But with all the injuries that they've got, with the changes at the back they've already making, plus them dropping points against Chelsea, will mean I think they'll need to go full strength over the next couple of games and not risk giving Ben White any minutes. I expect Ben White to start in the next Champions League game, so I have gone with Timber. I couldn't buy Saliba because he's a doubt. Calafiori also got taken off at halftime after he got booked, and I just think Timber is the safest for minutes and the most reliable with a bit of attacking threat. Now, when Gabriel comes back, I may well do Timber sideways to Gabriel, but Timber has come in. The other reason I did the -4, I could have just let Anderson of Fulham sub in off the bench for me at home to Manchester City. But when I'm also not certain that Richards is definitely going to start, and then Rodon would potentially be subbing in for me, it would then leave my team looking very light if I didn't sell Senesi and Richards didn't start. I would be getting Anderson and Rodon off my bench, which is not something I love. So despite the fact that I'm not sure the -4 for Timber effectively overplaying Anderson is definitely worth it this week, and actually if you've missed a price change on it, I would be tempted just to roll and do the 2 transfers next week for free. I have done it. Save the 0.1 potential value change. The other option that I almost went with was Daniel Munoz. Burnley away this week, I really like, and I definitely have a plan in a couple of weeks to buy Munoz, probably in place of Richards, depending on how he gets on in terms of minutes over the next couple of games. But the reason I didn't, Munoz is on 4 yellows. This week, I think it's quite close. If they both start, Munoz is probably slightly better than Timber. Next week, Timber goes away to Aston Villa and Munoz goes away to Fulham. I would probably just about prefer Munoz again in that fixture, but remember, he's on 4 yellow cards, so if he was to get booked, then having Timber would definitely be the better scenario. But then in game week 16, again with Munoz on 4 yellows, he has Manchester City at home, Munoz, whereas Timber has Wolves at home. So I actually looked at it over a block of 3 games. The other one is likely to come in for me in either game week 16 or 17. And I looked at it over a short-term block and thought, I think Munoz is probably not quite as good short-term, plus the risk of 4 yellow cards. So I went with Timber and did what I've just told everyone to do and get back on double Arsenal defense because they look so strong. So Van Dijk has also only kept a clean sheet against West Ham when I took him out on free hit. That is what it is. But let's hope he can get another one at home to Sunderland. Sunderland have looked good, but not quite as good as they did earlier on in the season. And particularly at home, they've been better versus away from home. But let's see what Liverpool we get. And of course, Richards with Anderson and Rodon on the bench. Into midfield, I made the second transfer and I went with Elliot Anderson as my Ismaila Sarr replacement. I couldn't afford Minter. If I'd have gone with Daniel Munoz, I would have had exact money to buy Minter. But again, with the future moves of buying both Timber and Munoz over the next few weeks, I couldn't afford Minter. And I like Anderson as a sort of 11th attacker every single week. He's good for DEFCON. He's good for bonus, as we saw in the Brighton game. He takes some set pieces, some corners, as we've seen with his assists over the past couple of game weeks. And we know he's in the pecking order somewhere for penalties. Now, there was this clip going around where apparently Thomas Tuchel told Gibbs White not to take penalties anymore. Whether that actually happens or not, we don't know. Chris Wood is nowhere to be seen. Igor Jesus is probably above Anderson in the pecking order, but he doesn't play 90 every week. So there's a chance Anderson has some penalty share, but it's more the fact he's hitting DEFCON so much. He has some attacking potential. He plays a lot of minutes, and I just like him as a cheap 11th attacker that I can play pretty much every week, regardless of the fixture, and he'll have some involvement in what that Nottingham Forest team are doing. Elsewhere in my midfield, I've got a lot of players who I expect to play good minutes this week. Bruno, chances of him missing out feel very low. They only play once a week most of the time, and he plays every week. It's a good fixture at home to West Ham. Semenyo, as I said, feels very unlucky not to have got any returns in game week 13. It's Everton at home in game week 14. Let's hope he can get something there. Then it's Enzo and Saka. These are probably the two that do have a slight risk of not starting. But with Arsenal dropping points, I think Saka will. Whether he plays 90 or not, I'm not 100% sure. You've got the likes of Madueke back. You've got Martinelli. Trossard might be back. Gyökeres back in contention. Havertz is close. You've also got Odegaard. But dropping points, I don't think they can run the risk over the next few games of dropping any more, with Manchester City and maybe even Chelsea not that far behind them. Also with a favourable run for both of those teams. So I do expect Saka to start. And Enzo Fernandez, he tends to play pretty much every game for Chelsea, and it is away at Leeds, which is not the most straightforward game. And with Caicedo now out and suspended, I also think that Reece James won't play. And we've seen that in the press conference from Maresca after the game, where he basically said, no, Reece James can't play, which is then basically our other midfielders are Caicedo and Reece James. And if they're both not going to play, I can't see us lining up in a world which would basically be Andre Santos, someone else, and then maybe Palmer in the 10. And all of that to drop Enzo doesn't feel very likely. So as much as Chelsea will miss Caicedo, and it's a nightmare for us not to have him, from an FPL point of view, I think it does a positive, in which case I think Enzo will start away at Leeds. Up front, it is Mateta and Haaland. I do have Mark Guiu as my third on the bench. I think there's a small chance he starts away at Leeds for Chelsea. João Pedro didn't play that many minutes, though, against Arsenal, and Delap also didn't. So he probably doesn't start. He might get off the bench, but because I don't think he starts, he does go last to the bench, and he is below Anderson and Rodon. I've got Mateta and Haaland up front. With the Sarr injury, Mateta's minutes just go up because the amount of players that they have the ability to rotate in that forward line is even worse than it was before Sarr got injured. I do think they look tired, and we saw that in the second half against Man United. They look tired, and I am looking at a potential route of doing Mateta to Igor Thiago of Brentford over the next couple of game weeks. And let's see how Mateta gets on. Let's see how his minutes are in this Burnley fixture. He might get benched for Nketiah, but I think it's more likely that Nketiah plays in Sarr's position alongside Mateta. In terms of captaincy, at the moment, my armband remains on Haaland. I think he is the best captaincy option long-term in the Premier League, and even though he's blanked in back-to-back games, he still had chances, particularly in the Newcastle game, less so in the West Ham game. Less so in the Leeds game. But in terms of other options, Saka and Bruno are definitely ones I'm considering. So we'll discuss captaincy more in the complete guide video tomorrow. At the moment, my ranking goes Haaland first, Bruno second, and Saka third. Just not that set on Saka's goal threat, whereas I think Bruno maybe has slightly more, and his assist potential looks really good. And Haaland has the best goal threat, so he is currently captain. So that is where we're at. We'll discuss captaincy, anything else in the complete guide video tomorrow. As I said earlier on in the video, this might be slightly longer, and tomorrow's complete guide video will also be longer, as there's only 2 videos between game week 13 and game week 14. Another reminder, it's a Tuesday evening deadline. I have confirmed those 2 transfers of Timber in for Senesi and Anderson in for Ismaila Sarr, with Senesi suspended and Sarr looking like he's injured. Haaland currently has my captaincy and Bruno currently has my vice captain, but I'm definitely not ruling out the fact that I might gamble against Haaland with either Bruno or Saka this week. But at the moment, it stays on Haaland. Anyway, let's wrap it up there. This video is almost 25 minutes long. As I said, any questions you have that you want covered in the complete guide video, drop it all in the comment section down below. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new, and I'll be back again very soon.